All right, welcome into the Stream Center. We are live on Rooted in Progress right now, bringing you some coverage earlier than our typical show on Thursday, all because we have been following diligently. If you all are part of the Rooted in Progress family, y'all know we have been following everything as it relates to this Diddy trial since the very beginning. It's your host, Deanne King, Terrance Middlebrooks, and we are joined by criminal defense attorney Michele Rayner, who has been with us since the jump and since the beginning. To catch folks up, it's been a wild day, Terrance.
Yeah, it's been a long day. Deanne, you and I were on WFLA now earlier today since the verdict came down, which was around 10:15 a.m. So, yeah, we've been at it for almost 8, 9, 10 hours today.
Now, to give everyone a recap, joining us now, Diddy has been acquitted. He was found not guilty of sex trafficking. He was found not guilty of racketeering. However, he was found guilty of 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Both of those counts could be up to a 10-year prison sentence. We also just recently learned within the last hour or so that Diddy was denied bond. He is going to stay in prison until October 3rd. His sentencing hearing. So we just heard from some of a lot of the attorneys. So the attorneys, the prosecution, and some of Diddy's defense attorneys. Let's listen in to what they just had to say.
The reaction is that we're pleased that he's finally been held responsible for 2 federal crimes, something that he's never faced in his life. He still faces substantial jail time. Of course, we would have liked to have seen a conviction on the sex crimes in RICO, but we understand beyond a reasonable doubt is a high standard, and we're just pleased that that he still faces substantial jail time. Well, each is faces up to 10 years on each. I'm not sure what the sentencing guidelines are given the various different things, but I'll leave that up to the government and the defense to argue. But I feel confident in saying he still faces substantial incarceration. Well, that's up to the judge. I don't have a personal vested interest in this case. Whatever the appropriate thing to do under the law is what should be done. And at the end of the day, he needs to be sentenced pursuant to the guidelines and pursuant to what the law is. My understanding of that is that he faces significant incarceration. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
The prosecution, and that was one of the things that we were constantly waiting to hear from. We were waiting to hear from the attorneys, and who better to join us on our panel other than the Matthew Russell Lee, who was actually among all the people out there in New York. You have been in court all day. We're going to start with you, Matthew. Just give us a break. You doing okay? How you feeling?
Oh, Matthew, we don't hear you, Matthew. Let's see where you are.
We don't have your sound right now.
So Matthew just joined us, guys.
He's joining us, literally just got off of the ground looking to ask questions to those attorneys. And Matthew, do we have your...
Go ahead and talk, Matthew. Where do you...
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
there
we got you,
we
Matthew.
go. We got you, Matthew. How you
so
feeling?
Matthew just joined us, so we weren't able to do our little tech check with Matthew, but thank you, and we're glad.
Sorry about that.
No, it's our fault, man. Let's go.
How you feeling?
I was just going to say that I'm okay. The lawyer you just showed is the prosecutors haven't spoken. I think that they view this as a loss. They have not. They would have done a press conference had the result been different. That lawyer was Cassie's lawyer, Douglas Wigdor. So it sounded like he was with the prosecution, but he's actually with he's Cassie's personal lawyer.
Were you able to be a part of that group of reporters asking any questions to him?
Yeah, I was just outside asking the defense team. I wanted to ask them if they're going to appeal the Mann Act conviction, but they didn't take any questions. You may have seen them. Nicole Westmoreland, all of them spoke. In fact, even Jacob Driscoll, but they didn't take any questions.
Well, just from what we saw right before our show started, there was a lot of smiles and some sort of a celebratory demeanor.
Very much so.
Yeah, but you say you don't think this was a win for them, or kind of?
Oh no! I'm saying the prosecution.
The prosecution. I'm sorry. Yeah, the prosecution.
The defense absolutely presented it as a win.
Yeah.
Although he remains in jail, the guidelines are not. People talk about 20 years. Even the government says the guideline starts around 51 months, and the defense is saying that it's around 21 months,
yeah.
And he's already served 10 months.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to be arguing for a time served sentence when he comes up for sentencing.
Wow.
And the other thing that you may not have caught is that the sentencing may happen before October. There's some discussion of bringing the sentencing up to make it faster because he's going to ask for time served. And the judge has shown a willingness to consider it basically as fast as they can get a pre-sentencing report. I'm sorry for the echo. I'm in the courthouse, so it's a bit.
No, you are good, Matthew. Everything's coming across well on our end. Michele, I want you to chime in on that because that's what you said. You were like, if I was his attorney, if you were Diddy's attorney, you're happy.
1,000%. I mean, if anytime your client is acquitted on anything, it's a win, right? Anytime that you can do 2 out of 3, and especially he was facing potential life sentences, right? So one, I know that his attorneys are probably elated. Number 2, to Matthew's point, when you're thinking about the sentencing guidelines, and for those folks who don't know what the sentencing guidelines are, in every federal criminal case, and in that matter, state criminal case, at least here in Florida, there is a guidelines that are set forth, what we call colloquially a score sheet. So based on maybe prior crimes, prior convictions, whatever Diddy may score out. I don't know off the top of my head what any prior state or federal charges that he may have been convicted of. That's going to go on our score sheet. And so then there's a number calculation that happens, right? And then what we call that bottom of the guidelines. So if the bottom of the guidelines is, closer to 20 months, he's already been in there for 10 months. I'm his attorney. Most certainly I'm asking for a time served sentence. I think that folks who are saying, okay, well, he's facing up to 10 years on each count. Well, there's a couple of things there. One, that he would have to have a judge that would want to literally give him the maximum. 2, then if the judge were to give him the maximum, the judge would have to then sentence him consecutively for him to be able to serve all 20 years. I just don't foresee that happening. Wow. I did say, though, that I didn't think he was going to be let out pending sentencing.
Yeah,
because I thought that there was no reason for a judge to do that. He's been in there 10 months. He is a flight risk regardless if they take his passport and all of those kinds of things. And there's no reasonable interest for the court to allow him to be out. But I like I said, I think that if I'm his defense attorney, this is a win.
It's a win.
So, Michele, Matthew reported earlier today, about an hour or so ago, that there has been a proposal for expediting sentencing. Just from your expertise, what can you dive into that? And I think it's going to be next week, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Matthew?
There's a hearing on it next Tuesday.
Yeah,
next Tuesday, they're going to
tell us for
hear about the request for an expedited sentencing. He's going to want to have something called the pre-sentencing report that's prepared by the Department of Probation. So that's kind of the limiter on it. They can only do it so fast, but I believe they can do it faster than October. And I think that the judge will accommodate them in that.
The bottom line is Diddy wants to get out. He's ready to go home. He's ready to get out of here. He's ready to get this over with. So with that request from his defense to the judge, what timetable are we looking at? Obviously not October 3rd. Is this a few more weeks? Is this a few months?
Could be late August. I could see them doing it late August. The one thing to remember is that even what the prosecutors sort of previewed today is that although the guideline for the transportation for prostitution charges is like 51 months to maybe a year above that, they're going to ask for more, I believe. And the reason is they're going to call it relevant conduct. They're going to say he was only convicted, quote unquote, of transporting these male entertainers to have sex, but part of that, they're going to bring in the violence and say, although he wasn't convicted of RICO, although he wasn't convicted of sex trafficking, there was evidence produced of, and it's pretty, the CNN tape speaks for itself. So the 2 convictions don't go to that CNN tape, and that's going to be brought up at sentencing, as well as testimony about Jane getting beaten up in her house, various things. So I don't know exactly where the judge is going to go with it. He seemed to be, he definitely didn't tip his hand in his trial. He's not a hanging judge, nor is he overly soft. I could imagine a judge releasing him today, to be honest. I don't want to disagree, but I thought it was possible he might get out on bail simply because if he'd initially been charged with these Mann Act charges, I don't think he would have been put in jail. I think that these are the kind of charges that usually you stay out on bail on. He was put in jail because he was charged with racketeering and because there was allegations of tampering with witnesses. So I thought he had a good shot at it, but it didn't work. And I think that may show you that the judge feels that there's more to this case than just what he was convicted of.
I agree. I totally agree with that. When I saw, because I was watching Matthew's tweets and getting the notifications on when he was tweeting this stuff out live from the courtroom, when I saw that he denied his bond, I said, okay. I think the judge sees beyond the fact that he was found not guilty on certain charges.
1,000%.
Yeah, I think the judge saw beyond the split verdict.
Of course, but also I think the judge also, to Matthew's point, he was found guilty on something, right?
Correct.
Right? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So ultimately, that's why I thought that he wasn't going to be let out. Not even, with the allegations of that. But normally what I've seen is that if you are in custody while your case is pending, there has to be, for a judge to say you've been found guilty and you've been in custody, there has to be an extraordinary reason to let him out. So I think, to Matthew's point, I don't necessarily think it's a disagreement. I think it's just the totality of the circumstances of all the factors that played in as to why the judge did not let him out. And I think, to Matthew's point, you're going to maybe hear in the pronouncement of whatever sentence the judge gives that the judge will allude to other factors that he may not have been convicted on, but most certainly maybe in the judge's mind were proven at trial. But, obviously the jury did what they did.
Matthew, this is a question that's been on my mind since everything was adjourned. Talk about the difference in the reaction of Diddy when the verdict came in and came down. How did he react to that versus how did he react when he found out that bail was denied?
Oh yeah, I'll even go further back. Yesterday, he looked very upset when he was told that there were 4 verdicts reached. And I think that the defense team may have assumed that the 4 were guilty because all of them looked very upset. As it turns out, 2 were not guilty and 2 were guilty, and then the 2 lesser charges. Now today, once they heard that at 10 in the morning, the defense team. I have to say, I saw 2 of the lawyers sort of patting each other on the back, and just now outside the courthouse, they declared it a victory for the jury system and for a great defense team. They weren't calling this a mixed verdict, and there was applause actually. I don't know if I tried to capture that, but after the judge stepped out, they usually tell people not to do that, but his family members were there, some supporters were there, and there was some pretty loud applause. So he looked very pleased. I can't say, I don't think he showed upset at the bail decision. I don't think that I also don't think they want to make the judge mad. I think that's one thing I took from the press conference or press stakeout just outside. They're not in the business of saying the judge did anything wrong because they want a good decision on sentencing.
Correct.
So I think that they probably are not going to complain a lot about the bail decision either, because it's arguably a correct decision, right? So but the mood today after the verdict compared to yesterday was night and day.
You're talking about emotional roller coaster. I mean, the highs from earlier
Absolutely.
today. We saw family.
Everyone here is surprised, to be honest with you, because in part because the Southern District prosecutors, they have a huge batting average. I mean, they literally, I think last time we spoke, it's over 95% of cases and of charges they get a conviction on. So I think they're and beyond just the numbers game, I think these prosecutors took this very personally. I think that they are, somebody said that they were the 6-pack. There was a lot of talk about this, but I think that they view themselves as defenders of sex abuse victims. They view themselves as feminists. They believed in the theory of this case, which was that a person can consent and then withdraw consent, or that a person can be described as a girlfriend and the abuse can be criminal as a system of coercion. And that theory may still be, I can definitely imagine that working sometimes. It didn't work here. The question is it because his lawyers are so great and so numerous? Right. Was it because maybe Jane as a witness was not a bad witness, but can people relate to somebody saying, I'm being coerced because my expensive home payments are not going to be made.
Right.
I think this could rub people wrong, and I don't mean it with any disrespect to her, but I just in speaking to people around the courthouse and looking at faces, it's not the normal sex, it's not a normal sex trafficking scenario that you would that people might be used to seeing.
Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just tuning in to Rooted in Progress, we're here with legal expert Michele Rayner, courtroom reporter Matthew Lee, who was right front and center there in the courtroom during the Diddy trial. So we are here just unpacking all the information that's came down today. And Deanne, you and I have been at it since early this morning, since that verdict came in. Michele, can we dive into a little bit of the verdict that took place, and what does that mean for those that don't quite understand?
Yeah, so I think first off, to Matthew's point, I think that if I'm a prosecutor in this case, I am not happy today. I do think that they took it very seriously. I think that the Southern District of New York, to Matthew's point, once again, that's a very serious office. That is a very serious U.S. Attorney's Office, and they very much so lead and have the thought process of, we do not try cases unless we know we can win them, right? And so I think that today, and I've seen other folks say this, that this may have been a little bit of a blow to the prosecutors, right? I think that they were very clear in their cases that they set forth. But once again, he was acquitted on racketeering and he was acquitted on sex trafficking, but then he was found guilty on the Mann Act, which is interesting because the Mann Act, and I think for those who want the Googles, because it's actually really interesting, just the origin of the Mann Act actually is kind of rooted in like racist history. And in fact, his attorneys, I believe, filed a motion in like February to actually deal with the Mann Act and actually address the racist history of the Mann Act. It was first used on boxer Jack Johnson in 1910 when he was in a relationship with a white woman that was 19 years old, and that he brought her across state lines for immoral behavior, and then has since expanded into prostitution and so forth and so on. And so it's interesting that those were the two charges that he was actually convicted on. However, the racketeering, the criminal enterprise, then, saying that he oversaw this criminal enterprise, this enterprise for criminal activity, that they, weren't able to prove that in a way that was just more than he just had awful behavior. Listen, personally, do I think that there was criminal activity there? 1,000%. Right. But it's not what you think, it's what you can prove. Right.
Right.
And also the sex trafficking. Do I think that he committed sex trafficking? 100%. But once again, it's not what I think, it's what we can prove. And whatever testimony, whatever evidence that was presented at the trial, unfortunately was not compelling enough for a jury to convict him on those counts.
I think that's interesting, especially all of us. We have been watching this literally. It's so crazy to think back from the inception in day one and following and waking up every morning and going through Matthew's tweets of what took place in court. Matthew, having been in court since day one, what was your initial reaction hearing the verdict come down?
I mean, I'll say I was surprised that, there was a lot of evidence produced. I agree that it was, again, it was a complicated case. Even in the Mann Act, in this case, he wasn't a participant. It's a kind of a unique, this whole situation is unique. Like, I covered Harvey Weinstein case, the movie guy, even Jeffrey Epstein died, but I covered Ghislaine Maxwell. In those cases, the perpetrator is the one who's actually having the sex. He's abusing people that want to get a movie role. Here, it's kind of, I think it kind of freaked the jurors out. He was flying in kind of male porn stars or exotic dancers, whichever you want to call them, but many of them were adult film actors. And some of them, they found them through the adult films, and he would fly them in to have sex in Cassie Ventura, at the time his serious girlfriend, and then Jane, who I think, it's a more ambiguous relationship, I think. There was, and so I think that's what made it sort of different to people. Is it wasn't, and I think that it might have. They just couldn't get they couldn't get their head around it. And of course they did. These lawyers are, I don't want to say they're vicious. They're doing their job.
Yeah.
They found a lot of text messages where Cassie said, "I'm looking forward to it," or "I really like it." Now they tried to explain that away. Jane tried to say, "I only said I liked it because I wanted to make my partner happy." But the message is the message. So it became, I think that's what made it a unique situation. I still was surprised because the the testimony was so bad. The thing that bothered me the most, and I know this is a family channel, so I'm going to be careful how I say it. But
You ain't
in
gotta be
one
careful,
case,
Matthew.
in one case, he had Combs, according to the testimony, had Jane, sleep with 3 men in a row, and between men 2 and 3, she vomited and said, "I don't want it to continue." And he said, "You better get out there."
Wow.
To me, this is a convictable offense, and although he was not convicted of sex trafficking, I believe that the judge will consider that at sentencing
Yes.
in terms of quote relevant conduct, because
Yes.
it's egregious. It's egregious, and it shows a level of callousness that the guidelines, the sentencing guidelines, don't really capture. And I think
Wow.
that's something that I think that I understand the defense lawyers were very happy. Their business is to defend criminal, and it's rare to get this kind of a win.
Yeah.
But I think they might want to be a little more self-reflective when you go back to that testimony. It's hard to feel comfortable with that. This is not just it's one thing to say this is somebody's personal sex life, and so as a First Amendment matter, get out of the bedroom. And it's another thing to say there was also some testimony about, urination in somebody's mouth. It's hard to say that somebody really wanted that. So I think you're going to hear both of those. I say this now because I think that in the sentencing memos and even at sentencing itself, you're going to hear those referred to. And I can't imagine that it's not worth a few extra months on the tail end of a sentence.
What's interesting for folks who don't know a lot about Matthew's background, Matthew is also an attorney as well. So Michele and Matthew, I want both of y'all to weigh in on this. And Michele, we talked about it a little bit earlier when we were live. What do we think happens next? Do we think we are going to see any state attempt to charge Diddy with state crimes like domestic violence or sexual assault? Do y'all think that that's coming?
And Matthew, and shout out to the attorneys. But you also made a good decision by getting out. But either
I still do some filings to unseal things, but I'm not defending any.
But as someone who is a defense attorney through and through, here's the deal. I think one of the things is that depending upon what state, so you have to look and see what the statute of limitations is. So if the domestic violence issue, for most certainly the video that happened at the hotel in California, I don't know off the top of my head what the statute of limitations is for domestic violence. If that would just be a domestic violence charge, would it be aggravated depending on what that is? So one, does whatever acts he committed fall within the respective state statute of limitations? Number two, you can be charged federally and convicted federally and still be charged in the state for those same actions. Like I shared, I have a client right now that I am defending that has been charged and convicted in federal court on the same exact charges that are happening in state court in Polk County. And I'm like, but why are we doing it?
But that's considered double jeopardy,
it's
though,
not.
right?
It's
not
actually
because
not.
It's federal and state?
It's federal and state,
Wow.
two different jurisdictions, two different
Separate sovereigns.
It's correct. So it's not double jeopardy. So if I think here, all things being equal, if you have state charges that are applicable, that does not fall outside of the statute of limitations, they believe that they can make a case. They may want to make an example. As I said earlier, they may be a state attorney or a district attorney that wants to make a name for him or herself, that decides that they want to go after of that. I mean, because here's the thing. The defense said, I believe in their opening, correct me if I'm wrong, this is not a domestic violence case.
Right.
They said that.
They did.
So kind of admitting like, this is a domestic violence case, but they ain't a domestic violence case here in federal court. So, but once again, not knowing the respective statute of limitations. And for those who don't know what statute of limitations means, so I want to break it down so we can talk to folks. It just means that you have a certain amount of time in which you are able to bring charges. And if you bring charges outside of that time, unfortunately, no matter what crime you committed, you can't bring those charges. So that's what that means. So I think that we have to, I don't know. The answer is I don't know. Could it happen? Sure. Yeah. But I definitely think to the point that has been made before, we're going to still see probably a bevy of civil litigation happen in this matter.
Matthew, what do you think about that?
No, there is a bevy of civil litigation. I mean, just here in the Southern District, there's about 24 suits. Wow. I think that, for example, I mean, Alvin Bragg is the Manhattan DA. Oh, yeah. And some of these events took place in Manhattan. Now, I don't know. He's shown a willingness. For example, Steve Bannon. This is obviously a different kind of a crime. But when he got a pardon at the federal level, he was nevertheless prosecuted at the state level. They ended up settling the charges without jail time, but he could do it. And I think, having just heard the evidence in this case, there are incidents in New York, in LA, in Miami, to some degree in Las Vegas, maybe in the Turks and Caicos. I don't know what their statute of limitations is, but I think that those prosecutors would also, though, they'd have to really want to do it, because they would be accused of being kind of opportunistic. They would say, that Combs was acquitted federally, and what are you doing? So I think it's more likely that they would find new. And there are other instances. There was a witness called Gina that was going to testify, and at the last second went missing. And there was testimony about her having a glass apples thrown at her. I think that all of the things that happened to Cassie and Jane, as terrible as they are, happened to Gina as well. Wow. And honestly, there's probably others, because there was one instance where they were testifying to where Jane was saying, "I don't think I'm going to do a freak off," and it turned out that Combs had a whole other hotel room and somebody else, who's, I think Dane was said, and I'm not going to say it voluntarily, but I think he was juggling freak off partners at the same time and not long ago. So I think it is possible, and I think obviously journalists and others and victim advocates like Wigdor and Tony Busby, who's brought a lot of these cases, they might want to ask the local prosecutors in LA, Miami, New York, Las Vegas, what they're going to do about that.
I mean,
I just want to backtrack real quick, Michele and Matthew. And Michele, you were on a couple weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, and the last time I think I brought this question up then as well. But with what Diddy was charged for, did it match the evidence, the video evidence that we saw, the abuse charges? Why did the prosecution go after those charges? To me, I thought they set themselves up for failure with the racketeering, with the sex trafficking and everything, versus what we've seen play over and over and over again on our television and throughout social media.
Yeah, I mean, so when I'm going to take even further back, when the indictment came out, right? One of the very first things I said to you is normally that if the federal government charges you, baby, let's wrap it up. Like, it's about a plea. Like, I tell my clients, you want to go to trial on this? This is a plea. Like, they have the evidence, right? That is normally the mindset when the federal government files an indictment against you, right? That's normally the mindset. So I was surprised that the evidence felt a little tenuous to me. And so I want to be very clear. I am a criminal defense attorney, but I am a woman first. So as a woman, I'm like, lock them up, string them up, lock them up. It's a wrap. However, if we're looking at it just as the law, and you take the set of facts against the evidence that was presented, I don't know if you can get to racketeering. I don't know if you can get to sex trafficking. I think that you get to a person that's an awful human being. I think that you get to a person, and unfortunately that's not, because a lot of people would be locked up there if that was a crime. I think that what you have seen, and some folks have alluded to, that maybe the U.S. attorney overcharged, right? Yeah. And so, and they overcharged, and unfortunately, but fortunately, they were able to get a win on those two charges that are somewhat, that are still used, but somewhat a little, kind of like that's not like a known stringent charge. You know what I mean?
I'm wondering if that has anything to do, and Matthew, please explain what really happened here. When we got to closing, it was either right before closing or during closing. The U.S. Attorney's Office backpedaled on certain charges. Yeah. Is it because they had that reckoning of, hold on now, we might have got too big for our britches? What happened there, Matthew?
I actually think I think it's true, and I also think that, again, here I do want to shout out some of Combs's lawyers, particularly Alexandra Shapiro. She's like their appeals specialist, and she's done a lot of. She represented Sam Bankman-Fried in the FTX crypto case, a number of other cases. I think based on some of their arguments, they decided what they dropped were the attempt theory of some of the RICO predicates. They were not sure they could prove, attempted kidnapping. So but they didn't drop. I mean, I think it was misreported by many. They didn't drop the idea that he did 3 kidnappings, and they dropped the attempted arson, but they claimed that he did arson. I want to go back to why they did it this way. I agree that they're going to have to conclude that they reached too far. But I think what happened is everyone saw that when CNN ran the video of Cassidy getting kicked around, probably not, they're not the only prosecutors that said something should be done, but they are the Southern District. So basically the cases that they want, they're going to take. That's why they got the FTX case. It could have been done in Miami, but it was done in New York. And I think when they did the raid and they looked at people's phones, they were surprised at how much of Combs's inner circle and enterprise, people getting paid by Bad Boy Records, were actually working for him, buying drugs, paying bribes to get videotapes, setting up the hotel rooms. So I think it is a unique. Harvey Weinstein had people that drove him around, but it wasn't like the movie company was as involved as here in his various abusive activities. So I think they saw that. I think that they didn't just reach out of nowhere. I think that they saw a pattern that they hadn't seen elsewhere, and they said, "This is going to." It was a reach, but it was there in their grasp. Now the question is, once they looked into it, once they realized they couldn't really tie him to burning the car, it seems obvious that he did it. He said he was going to do it, and then it happened. They don't have any physical evidence.
Right.
There's no physical evidence. So maybe they should have dropped that one. And I think in the jury's mind, once you charge too many things, if you charge 6 things and 2 of them end up being, it's not just that they say, well, that's just 2. What about the other 4? They start distrusting the whole enterprise.
Right.
They say, wait a second. And I think I can't wait. I'm really hoping that some of the jurors do interviews. If I can get them, I'll do them.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's TMZ
Matthew,
and others.
I want you after them so bad.
Matthew.
I want to know.
Ring, Matt, call him.
Yeah, but the judge said to them, don't
talk
more
to the
strongly
media.
than I've seen other judges do it. He was very like, don't do. Usually judges say, you're free to talk, but don't talk about what the others said.
Right.
He said, don't talk.
Now, is there a
So I don't know
timetable
what
to
we're going to
that?
get.
Is there a timetable to
Well,
that?
they don't have to listen to that.
I mean, I don't think that's an
because-
There's any
order.
time limit on him. He seems to, I think he doesn't want he's a new judge. He's a relatively new judge. He's very smart. He definitely doesn't want
Do
this
they have
reversed.
to listen to that? No.
Say again?
I mean,
I don't think so. I think
All
one
right, so
needs
there's
to
like,
talk, too. I think people want to talk, and I think, I think we're going to bring them.
I mean, and I understand why he doesn't want them to talk. One, like sentencing hasn't happened yet, right? So like that's number one. Number two, also you're inviting a lot of things into your life when you then become a juror that it becomes public. So I think that there is the idea of the judge sentencing hasn't happened. He wants to kind of keep this, tight, but also maybe I think they're also of like, you think that this may be cool and fun and you want to talk and have your, 5 minutes of fame, but what you may be inviting into your life, if you do that, I think could be more problematic. But Matthew, to your point, I think it's really interesting is that when they initially charged him with racketeering, I was like, and a criminal enterprise, I just knew that they had it. I was like, oh, y'all got it. Like, y'all have him like holding a gun to somebody's head, something crazy. Like, you had that. And I think for me, I was very surprised that they were not able to make that tighter connection than what they were able to do. And that was very surprising to me, because I thought that connection was going to be a little bit tighter than what we actually saw being presented at trial.
No, I agree. I kept expecting there to be a superseding indictment. Like there were, but they didn't go much. They added forced labor, which was a stretch as well. I mean, what people said is at trial it came out that somebody, yes, they had to work 24 hours a day, but they were getting paid $100,000 a year. And they were able to say, like, a lot of people's personal assistants, people, they wanted to work in the industry. A number of the witnesses blew up in the prosecution's face. For example, they put on the stand a guy called Derek Ferguson, who was the CFO of one of Combs's companies.
Right.
And although he was willing to say, yes, here was a wire transfer of $20,000 that might have been extortion, he said, I loved John Combs. He hired people from my community and he's a great businessman. Then they put on this guy called Brendan Paul, who was the drug mule, quote unquote. And this guy said, Sean Combs is a business genius. Only 1% of my work was buying drugs for him, and I'm proud that I worked for him. So these shouldn't have been government witnesses. They should have vetted these guys better, because it blew up. They didn't have to put on any witnesses because the 3 of the government's witnesses testified for the defense.
Correct.
I mean, 100%. And it's hard to make him out this criminal kingpin when you have people that have said, and once again, like, also let's just talk about, you have women versus a man, right? Versus a very powerful man. And I think that you have people who are saying that he's done so much for me. I understand that he may have done this, that, but right. And so the government wasn't able to get the testimony out that they wanted from the folks that they actually needed. And then number 2, I think to Matthew's earlier point, while all of us on this on this podcast right now, we can intellectually understand how someone can be coerced even if they live in a mansion. How does that actually bode well with the average juror, right? How do I feel sorry for them, especially if there are text messages being produced saying, I love you, I'm looking forward to it. We all know here that, like, that could happen. Someone could be beating your behind, and then you still say because of the psychology of all of that. So I think that was also probably a far leap for them as well.
The point and the thing that I've been talking about today is the victims, because I've been on air, I've been on television, on a newscast, and I've said it. Cassie is a victim.
Say it again louder for the people in the back.
Cassie is a victim.
She is.
Now, I will say the other victims who, the ones who claim to have been victims from Sean Diddy Combs there, I could only imagine what they're going through right now.
Again,
and one of
exactly.
one of the questions that we got on our live stream earlier today was, is there any fear of retaliation?
I would 100.
Absolutely.
Yes. This man is still rich. This man is still rich.
Yes.
He still has reach. You had people come up under oath and testify for the government saying he's a great person.
Yeah.
Well, you think about
Let me just say this. I don't think he's going to do anything before sentencing. I think he would
he's not going to do anything before sentencing.
He would be a fool to retaliate against anyone before sentencing. But after that,
this question was asked before we found out that his bond was denied. So there was that thought of perhaps fear if this man was to walk out of the courtroom today.
I think that's also a part of the other reason why, and I think when we were talking when I was on earlier, why, there had been earlier witness tampering. And I mentioned that there was earlier witness tampering. And while he can't tamper with anybody right now, but the idea that he could, retaliate against someone that that testified against him or, whatever, while he is out on bond, because here's the reality of the situation. I'll say this, and I don't care who has a problem with this. Diddy has impulse control issues.
Right.
Yeah.
Period. Full stop. And so, yes, Matthew, you and I know, he should not do anything before sentencing. But a person that has shown he has impulse control issues, there is not a world that I don't believe that if he was released out on bond pending sentencing, that he would not have tried to do something, get someone to do something for them, and to re-victimize these people over again, to get on Instagram and say, do whatever dumb foolishness. I'm trying not to cuss because this is a family show. Dumb
You done cussed on here before.
It
Okay,
won't be the first time.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time, but you know, I got stuff going on. Yeah. So, but to do just be dumb and just say stupid stuff because he has impulse control issues. Because at the I'm gonna cuss like that. The black ass bottom line, he is a narcissist. He is a sociopath. I would go as far to say he has psychopathic tendencies. I am not a doctor, but the evidence is evidencing. The evidence is evidencing, and I think that is to me another reason why I think the judge was like, not only have you been in, but baby, we can't trust you to be out here with
Well,
me.
let me read what NBC reported today. NBC News reported today. It came down. It said the defense own language is coming back to haunt Combs' team. And
Correct.
The judge said that Combs' attorneys conceded to the jury that there was violence in this case. His attorney said in their opening and closing argument that Combs was guilty of domestic violence, but that his offenses did not meet the bar of racketeering or sex trafficking. However, I think with that statement right there in the opening and closing arguments, kind of triggered something with that judge and saying, okay, this guy's violent. And domestic violence is still hanging over his head.
Matthew, has there been any talk about this? Like, because I think this is a really big conversation that a lot of people are that's happening, where a lot of people are thinking about what's next. There are tons of people right outside of that courtroom. Have you heard any rumblings about this?
I guess I'm going to go back. I think it's true. What Agnifilo said right in his opening statement was, if he were charged with domestic violence, he would plead guilty because he committed that. I think this was a way to try to get the jury to say, hey, but this case is about domestic violence, and they've charged it as something else. It was quoted back to him. So it felt sort of just in a way, because it was a strategic defense that they used, trying to say this was just domestic violence. So then it was like, you've admitted domestic violence. The government, if you look at, you'll see now their filings, they said that he's going to keep him in because he's going to retaliate. And they also got one of the witnesses, Deante, the stylist, Nash, put in a letter today. I don't know if it had been prepared in advance. He docu-signed it from wherever he is, saying, I'm afraid. So I think that's and I think, there's other people out there that he knows could be the basis of criminal charges against him. That's my sense, is that this is not the total universe of Sean Combs' victims. So
You are right.
how is he going to, if he's going to try to carrot or stick? I don't know.
Right.
I think there's some, they're going to be watching him closely. I will say that. I think that
of course,
while he's in jail, all the calls are recorded. And I mean, we'll see. You can also get a cell phone. You can buy a cell phone in jail. It seems to be pretty clear.
They got iPads.
I mean, listen, in the words of that immortal philosopher Sting in The Police, every step you take, every move you make, I'll be watching.
As a matter of fact, it was sampled by Diddy himself.
So
this is what just dropped in
Look at us in sync, friend.
This man
diabolical.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a tough one, and I think even his family. What was their reaction, Matthew, when you saw them in the courtroom and when they were coming out of the courthouse?
They applauded the verdict. They applauded the verdict, and yesterday they looked depressed, and today they looked very happy. And I think they may have thought he was going to get out on bail, but I think that they think it's coming soon. If not,
or
could be as soon as August. They're probably going to believe that he's going to get time served.
Yeah.
Matthew, was his daughters in the courtroom?
Yeah.
Yes, they were very much so.
And to me, that's the most disgusting thing, that his daughters have been in the courtroom for some of this egregious, awful testimony. Which, once again, I think you have to know that the judge is watching all of this behavior, not just what has been presented in trial, what has been presented in evidence, but also why would you want your twin daughters to be present for this? I know as a defense attorney why you want your twin daughters to be present for this, but
I think it's
also
about that. I think it's about the image. And as you said, we're talking about someone who, quite frankly, is conceited, and someone who's a bit self-centered. So if it works for the benefit of him, so
of course. I mean, but I think that all of those things are going to be taken into consideration. I think that as we are coming up to, if the hearing next week, when the pre-sentencing report or the pre-sentencing report is going to be done, we know that a little bit of it's already been done, because they do a pre like bail report before when they're considering bail. They do that type of screening, so some of the screening has been done. I think that it's going to be very interesting to see how the judge is going to carefully craft his sentence. I'm interested to know if it's going to be an oral pronouncement or if he's going to actually write out an actual ruling. So that's going to be interesting to
Sentencings
see.
are big, but yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
I mean, I think I'm going to have to go in a second, but I'm going to preview something. I'm going to live tweet the sentencing, because federal sentencing, it's going to take several hours. It's not pro forma. And usually the sentence is announced that same day, but sometimes the judge will take a break of 20 minutes to go in the back and come up with something after addressing the things that were said. There'll be witnesses. I believe there'll be victims speaking. It'll be a whole nother round of Diddy.
Okay.
Diddy in the courtroom.
So you'll be live tweeting the sentencing hearing.
That is correct.
That's next Tuesday, correct?
That's
No. The sentencing will be in like August.
Oh, okay.
It could be in October or August.
Okay.
I'll live tweet the hearing too. In for a penny, in for a pound. I'm working actually right now on my week 8 book about the trial.
Wow.
And there'll be week 9, maybe a short, and week 10 will be the sentencing.
You guys want to play by play? Follow this man.
There's a lot to it,
Yeah.
Yes.
If you all haven't, everyone who's tuning in right now, or whether you're listening in a little bit later after the live stream is posted, at Inner City Press, I'm telling you, it's the key to success.
It is.
I don't know. Well,
It is.
I mean,
Matthew, I'm following you right now.
Matthew, you have done a phenomenal job. I think watching you through this entire process, journalist to journalist, I truly honor and respect the work that you have done over the last couple of months. Because
it's been a lot of fun.
With this trial. Yeah, you have fun with it too. You do. And you do really well with responding to people too, because there's so many questions.
I mean, yeah, and you're in the courtroom, and I just followed you, and so please follow me back. Okay, thanks.
Not a plug.
I mean, just want to say, but no, I mean, I think, but it's so cool because you have a perspective that none of us have. None of us three sitting here don't have. Millions of people don't have. And so I think that it is the rigor in which you are doing this, I think is super is important and really impressive.
Yeah, especially with there's no cameras in the courtroom or anything. So Matthew, your work is
everything that we said. I just want to say, even though this result surprised me, and I know it upsets a lot of people who saw the evidence, and I find it sort of upsetting. I will say it does say something about the jury system. Not what the defense lawyers were saying, we proved it and the jurors stand between us and tyranny. I just mean you don't know what's going to happen. And they are 12 people and peers. Maybe this is the wrong result, but you can say this is not what the government wanted. It does show the power of a jury to reach a decision. And it could have been a nearly life sentence. And instead, it's going to be much, much less than that.
Well, real quick,
for better or worse.
I know we're about to wrap, but Matthew, we had you on a while back, and you did mention that the case was going to wrap up around the 4th of July weekend. Do you feel like there was a rush in the deliberation process to get a verdict out?
No, I mean, I think they took 3 days. I don't think that the jury was rushed. If anything, they wanted to yesterday to say we're deadlocked on RICO. So I think that the lawyer, it's what it is that the government trimmed its case down. They may regret that now. The defense, as it turns out, it could have gone, if they put on any witnesses, from the beginning, they said it was going to be a 2-week, defense case. Turned out to be a 2-hour defense case. So less. 20 minutes.
And we still haven't heard from Diddy, right?
No.
And you're
We
not
have
going
not-
to
He's
hear
not, I think if
Fran.
he's smart, he was
Fran.
going to speak.
Fran,
Yeah.
I'm going to let you know.
He was going to.
He was going to speak. Agnifilo said, my client wants to address you.
Listen,
And
and
then I
I
think
would
he
have,
told him
I
not
would
to.
have tackled my client if he would have said that.
thought he
Get
could
out
talk
of
his
here.
way out
Get
on bail.
Baby, you are not been sentenced yet.
Sit your butt. Your grandma would say,
yourself
"Sit your
down."
tail
Well, we appreciate
Yes,
everyone
Matthew.
tuning in. Matthew, we
Michele.
appreciate you coming literally straight out of a full day of work onto Rooted in Progress, giving us your insight, opinion, exclusive access into the courtroom today. We will continue to follow this and circle back when it comes time to sentencing. Michele,
Okay.
we always appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
in
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
rendering all of your knowledge and your expertise. So y'all ain't messing with this panel here, okay?
Yes.
Period. Period. Phil.
Now, we are typically live. If you are listening and tuning into Rooted in Progress for the first time, you can follow us on social media at Rooted in Progress. We are live every Thursday, 9:30 in the morning. Yes, this is way past everybody's bedtime. We are live on the WFLA Facebook page, the WFLA app. You can also watch and listen to these episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. I want to leave with this. Y'all love on each other.
Yes.
Yes.
In a respectful way, and respect each other. You never know what somebody is going through.
Yeah, and if you're in a domestic violence situation, there's help out there. Please,
Yes.
don't speak. Don't stay quiet. Speak
Yeah.
up. So, with that being said, guys, we want you all to stay rooted.
Stay rooted. Have a good one.
Have a good one, y'all.